Hi and welcome to another episode of Straight Out of Camera, proudly sponsored by Fujifilm South Africa. This is episode 8 and we are chatting about videography. Joining me live in studio is Managing Director of TechSmart.co.za, Mike Hubert. Mike, how are you doing?
Nicely, all well. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. And in Cape Town we have commercial photographer Leon Oosthuizen.
Hi guys, how are you doing?
Hi Leon. Mike, 20 years ago when I was still in high school, my favorite thing to do on weekends was go to a retailer that sold video cameras. And it was amazing. There was a dedicated area that you could go and watch and view the quality of these video cameras. And there was about 20 of them on display. Camera manufacturers like Sharp, Hitachi, Sanyo. If you're lucky today and you go to a professional camera store, you might find 4 video cameras.
So around about the same time that you went to those camera stores, 1995, the Ricoh RDC1 came out. Now that was a digital camera that was able to record not only still images, but also video and sound. It was the first one to be actually able to do so, and it recorded stuff on a 24 megabyte PC card. On that, you can get 4 scenes of 5 seconds each with sound. That was it. It costed about $1,500, and it came with a removable LCD screen, and from there everything kind of took off. You had video on digital cameras, and the rest is history.
Leon, that's quite an interesting thing because we go back to last week's conversation about digital cameras really killing the film market. Has digital really killed the video market as well?
If you're talking about digital still cameras, I think there's still a couple of years before that's completely transitioned. Depending on which brands we're looking at, certain brands deliberately hold back their tech from their DSLR lines so that their movie and film cameras can actually still flourish as a high-end design. And I think that's maybe a bit of a backwards way of looking at it. Instead of embracing putting as much as possible tech in one piece of equipment, because people don't want to duplicate. Equipment becomes expensive in life as well. So I think we are living in 2017, and at this stage we don't have flying cars and all that kind of stuff, but the tech that we have in our hands, in our phones and stuff like that, really some brands embrace it and others try and keep it slow, and they leak the tech out. So those are the two approaches that I've seen. In terms of keeping the positive spin on it for me is that the brands that have embraced it, and Fujifilm in particular, they've launched the X-T2 with 4K video, and the X-T20 now does that as well. It's all in camera, and firmware updates coming along with that really update the power of what is already in the hardware, and it gets tweaked as people request certain features or as they start to develop certain styles of treating the footage.
Leon, I agree with you when it comes to the professional market, but Mike, from a consumer perspective, has mirrorless and DSLR cameras not taken away the person that would normally buy a entry-level video camera?
Yes, definitely. No doubt about it. I think even you can talk about the influence of smartphones, for example. That killed the entry-level digital camera market, not necessarily DSLRs. And I think DSLRs did that to the video camera market, for sure.
The way that I see the modern tech-savvy, maybe teenager youngsters and online media generators, they look at things like Flixel and short YouTube clips, Snapchat. Those kind of things are video-based, but they have their origin in stills, and now people have moved over into a moving version of that. And I think that's a first step in a direction where all of that tech is in one device like your phone. Now, cameras obviously produce a higher quality, so for the people that want to have a premium service compared to what they can do in their phone, now you have mirrorless cameras that do the job. And for that purpose, I think that application is super cool. But when you come from a stills background, the way that you make moving pictures is very different from the typical Hollywood production style. So I think that the two will overlap and meet in the middle at some point. And I think we're quite close to that at where we are now, at the point in history. I think maybe 2 or 3 years from now, and I think the entire system will change so that it will be more portable.
I am wondering about what's happening when you look at, for example, videography and the influence of video on the modern age. If you look at the amount of videos being displayed on YouTube, is it going to surpass the way that we gather information? For example, are you still going to read an article about a new product or a new camera if you can view a video about it?
Personally, I think the video is always great, and if people are interested enough in the content and they want to know more, then they'll bother going to read or select a text that's written and let the computer read it back to you in a nice computerized voice. But I think there's still obviously space for written text because of the amount of data that you can store. Video itself is obviously time driven, so if then you've got to be very specific about what you give your time to. You can only go so quickly through video content, so I think that's more of a summary or a foyer into a lot of things. And if you do summaries, it will be more an advert versus where written text will be a feature film.
Okay, so I've got a little bit of a tidbit on the 30-minute limits on DSLRs, the video recording capability. In 2006, the EU wanted to slap an extra duty because they saw that video is coming on DSLRs, and they wanted to mention that this is now a video recorder capable of recording stuff from TV. So they wanted an extra 5 to 12% duty on all DSLRs coming in. That's why they limited it to 30 minutes, and that way they got past that legislation.
Mike, international cinematographers that we could look out for?
So I've got two favorites. Emmanuel Lubezki, he's a Mexican, perhaps best known for those long tracking shots for which he won an Oscar for in Birdman. I don't remember if you can remember the movie. It felt like one long shot from start to finish. Plus, of course, he won the Oscar the year before that for Gravity. My favorite scene from him is that insanely intense car ambush scene from Children of Men. Amazing movie, worthwhile, not just for the cinematography. Also, of course, Terrence Malick. He did movies for him, The Tree of Life and Knights of Cups. Plus, more recently, he shot The Revenant with Leonardo DiCaprio in only natural light. Quite interesting, that one. Another gentleman is an American by the name of Robert Elswit. He works on a lot of stuff with director Paul Thomas Anderson. He won an Oscar for his astounding work on There Will Be Blood. Plus, he was the director of photography not on one, not on two, but on three of the top spy franchises. Bond for Tomorrow Never Dies, Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, and The Bourne Legacy. So just to show that, you know, everybody can make some bad choices. He also worked on the massive flop that was Gigli, featuring Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez. Now, he's hardly to blame for that, but definitely a guy to check out, Robert Elswit.
Follow us on SOOC_live, both on Instagram and Facebook. We will provide links of the cinematographers Mike has featured.
Guess who got brands talking? Brandlive.co.za.
Have you ever thought about the power of social media? Social media has the power to make your business grow. Yeah. Why don't you let us manage your social media? Because our business is to see your business grow. Visit us at www.bstownmedia.co.za.
Our guest today here joining us in the studio is Fausto Becatti. He studied film and media at UCT and has been shooting commercials in the advertising space for the better part of 7 years. Having done ads for Nissan, Standard Bank, South African Tourism, Dutz and Hunters Dry, as well as music videos for Shadow Club and Spook Matambu, Fausto is certainly no stranger to the world of cinematography. Nor so for photography actually, since a solo exhibition of his street photography called Imposter is set to kick off on the 17th of May. Of his love for cinematography, he says the following: "I've always been obsessed with cameras and trying to understand how a scene is shot, to the point where others might see a bad movie, while I enjoy it based on the good cinematography." Fausto, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
What drew you to the world of cinematography initially?
I think I've just always been obsessed with cameras, and I remember I used to walk past, I think it was Photo Cats in Sandton, and I'd look at the Canon XL1 and wish that I could buy it and try work out how I could save up to buy it. I think it was 50,000 Rand at the time. And I was 17 and I was blown away. I was just always wanted a camera, and then eventually my mom and dad bought me a camera when I was 17, and then I just shot everything I possibly could on it. I used to shoot everything at school, and then I actually worked out a way to become a prefect by starting the film society at school. And then I did a DVD for our school, Matrix, and I sold that to everybody, and then it just grew from there.
So how did you combine kind of like the still imaging with videography?
So that camera that I got was a Sony, and it had a stills. It was like one of the first that had a stills function built into it. So I was happy days just shooting stills on that.
So it was a video camera,
rubbish quality.
Okay, sure.
But it was one of the first that had that function that you could have stills and video on the camera.
And then you went through to UCT, studied kind of in that that way too.
Yes, then we studied film production at UCT, so covering all the spheres of film production. And then I went mostly into directing, and then shooting and everything came with it.
Fausto, when you pick up a camera to make imagery, either moving or still, do you have preferences based on your film background? Do you approach and how do you start that process? Because I think the majority of people listening to the show are stills photographers, so it's really interesting to hear it coming from the other side.
Well, I think because film is very much based, I always use the analogy of flash. Well, not analogy, but I always talk about flash versus natural light, because photography has the ability to, you can construct a very different looking image to real life, whereas film, I think you're always trying to recreate real scenes with, and so I've always been influenced by natural light, I would say, and that's definitely the look and feel of my photography, and what I shoot video wise is very natural, and that's how it's always been influenced.
That's actually interesting that you say that, because when I look at your photography, there's very much like night scenes with these amazing colors, and it does feel like it's got this cinematic quality to it.
Yeah, I think that's happened. That's a very nice compliment, because that's what I try to achieve. I try and take something that's a real scene and give it a sort of cinematic edge. So try and use natural light, but make it almost look like a film. That's what I try to do with my photos and video.
Yeah, we had some of your images at the past Photo and Film, and the compliments that we received from your images has been that they can see the story along with the image. They can actually believe what's going to happen next, and that is an incredible talent that you have.
Thanks. Yeah, that's what I try to do, is try to capture make it look like it's a still from a movie, actually.
So you shoot ads and that type of stuff for a living.
Yes.
Quickly tell us a little bit about what's the task of the director of photography.
Well, his job, he's number 2 to the director, and he will have to execute the vision of the director and try and do it in a way that I think is inobtrusive. So a very good cinematographer will you wouldn't, the same as with a really good editor. If they say a very good editor, you won't notice that there's an edit at all. That means they've done their job correctly. So camera moves and all of that need to be very well planned out and make sense for every shot, and make sense for the story, and make sense for that scene, so that it doesn't feel out of place, and it should feel effortless. And that's when somebody's done their job right, I think. It's not for the sake of style necessarily always. It's for the sake of the story.
But there is a style element to that too, isn't it?
Sure, yeah. You would sit together, the director and the cinematographer sit together, and you probably look at references and go, this is the look and feel, what lenses are we going to shoot on, what camera are we going to shoot on, how are we going to light it, etc., etc.
So when you're talking about great cinematographers, a couple of guys that I've discussed beforehand,
good guys.
The work that they do alongside directors is a lot of sitting, talking, discussing, planning. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of one of the as a director, the first person you sit down with the most is the cinematographer. I think you sit there and you go through the story and you break it down and you work out what are we going to do together.
So on a movie like, for example, Birdman,
Yes.
how much is contributed to the director and how much is contributed to the DOP?
I think it's in a film like that with Lubezki, I think it's very linked. And I think Lubezki's there from day one, whereas the rest of the crew and cast start coming slower later into the process. They are there together from day one, going, how are we going to do this? How, so they are, well, I wouldn't say equally, but huge Lubezki in that film, but they've got a great working relationship,
Yeah, so I suppose the understanding must be there.
Yeah, they're probably like brothers and they know what they need to do together,
So sometimes there's obviously, just a big overlap. So, it's not necessarily two different people. Like Kubrick, he was as good a cinematographer as he was a director. He knew exactly what he wanted. And I think maybe a bit of a control freak, which is why he had some lenses commissioned and a whole bunch of other stuff like that. I'd like to find out from you that those directors, or maybe names that haven't been mentioned yet, who have been inspirational to you, and what is it about their work that move you? What elements of their production?
I would say definitely one of the hugest influences on me was Darren Aronofsky, the director, and he always works with Matthew Libatique. And when I first saw Pi, which is his first film, I was blown away and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I was very, I didn't really know how to break it down yet. So just remember that being a huge influence on me. And then the next film was Requiem for a Dream, where suddenly they'd got a bit more budget. And they studied together, actually. So the way that they've grown together is amazing to see the level of, Matthew Libatique has shot Iron Man 2.
Oh, yes, of course.
Huge Hollywood features, but then he'll also go then shoot with Darren Aronofsky and shoot Black Swan, which is shot on 16mm film, and it's got a completely different look. So I've just always loved following him, and he's been a huge influence. Matthew Libatique.
Looking at your work on Instagram, have you found that due to your cinematography or video work that you have gotten a lot of work for stills images?
Yeah, so that's just been a natural progression, is that still started as purely a hobby to get away from the creative council of filmmaking. There's too many people in the pot, and so it's just grown organically, which has been really interesting. Now I'm actually getting stills work, and now I'm using Flash, which is weird, but it's necessary for certain applications. So I actually enjoy it. I just enjoy learning anything about light or any camera.
You also do quite a bit of director's duty, is that correct?
Yeah.
So while on set, you take care of everything.
So I mostly direct. As I said, I've shot a lot of stuff, but a lot of the time I'm working with a cinematographer. But I know I'm very, very into the technical side of cinematography. So we will just geek out and always and I know very much specifically what I want. I think a lot of directors handle the performance and go, do your thing, cinematographer. Whereas I like to be at the camera, right next to him, talking about framing, talking about moves, talking about everything. So I might not be operating necessarily.
If we do talk about directors, a couple of guys like Michel Gondry started out with music videos, and you've done some music videos too. How difficult is it to place what's happening on the track to what's visually interpreted?
Yes, that's a good question. I just, from my personal experience working on music videos, I would just listen to the song 100 times till you hate it, and then either go, yes, I want to do this video, or not. And if it is yes, it's because the visuals just start coming to you, and then it's a natural fit. If I can't ever visualize with my eyes closed what the song is bringing me, then I won't shoot it.
So that depends then entirely on you, or is there discussion with the band happening too?
That'll just be on me, yeah.
And do you find that it's difficult to kind of imagine what's going to happen, because it's literally a little story that needs to take place in your head, isn't it?
Yes. I prefer to tell narrative stories in my music videos, or at least have some sort of a narrative thread. If it's not an overt story, at least to have something other than pure visuals. Because if it's purely for the visuals, I think it's a bit boring. I like narrative music videos.
Fausto, when you look at a movie like Baraka, it's basically one long music video in a sense, because it's only sound and visual. But in a way, I think there's a very strong overlap between a feature film and the way that you are able to look at each frame almost as a moving still image. Also the guys that did American Beauty, I was greatly inspired by the way that they treated each frame with such delicacy and poise that it could have gone either way. It could have been stills or movie, but they chose to tell a story in a feature. I was maybe a little bit curious to find out from you, if you take a look at the way that people treat those kind of images. You mentioned some 16mm film just now, and the guys that did Amelie and Delicatessen before. Amelie was shot in digital and Delicatessen on film. Do you have a preference, and is there film simulations and things that you apply to your images, or do you try and keep it clean?
From a grade perspective?
Yes, yeah. Do you grade, or do you shoot in camera? How do you treat your process?
Generally, there's a lot of time spent in grade with moving images. Yeah, so we always shoot log, and if you're lucky enough and you've got the time, you'll sit down with the DOP beforehand and work out some LUTs. So those are almost looks on set. It's a lookup table, and then you can, when you're on set, you can be monitoring and see exactly what your LUT might look like, but it doesn't burn it onto the image. So you still always have a log file that you can go back to, and when you sit in grade, you can tweak it afterwards. But that's not always the case. So generally what we'll have is it's called a Rec 709 lookup, which is just a basic, slightly contrasty look, so that you're not looking at the log, which can be very misleading, especially on TV commercials for clients and all of that. They don't understand that the image you're getting is the flattest image for grade. So a Rec 709 just gives it a general decent look. And then we'll sit and tweak.
For those that don't know, the F log or the log files, that's basically the video equivalent of a raw file. Is that correct?
Correct, absolutely. That's the video equivalent of a raw file, and it doesn't look fantastic out of the camera. It almost looks like it's lacking in color, but that's the most information.
Fausto,
Okay.
recently you also visited Japan with Desmond and the Tutus and Short Straw, and you documented just the behind the scenes with one of the mirrorless cameras. Just talk to us about that process and how it was.
So that was the first time I was shooting with the Fuji X-T2, and we're shooting 4K. And back to your point there, Leon, I would have loved to have shot F-Log, but it's not on the camera. So I shot with the classic chrome look, and that was a great experience, actually. I was blown away. We had to shoot a lot of nighttime stuff, a lot of on stage stuff where the lighting is constantly changing, and I'm used to shooting. I started with 7D and 5D, and so I'm quite used to shooting and having to manual focus, but it was proving quite challenging. And something that blew me away about the camera was turning it on to autofocus at f.2, 1.2 on that 56mm, and it managed to hit the marks all the time. And I couldn't, stage scene where the light's constantly changing, I was blown away.
That's great to hear, because there's always this question about is a camera like the modern mirrorless camera, is that good enough to actually produce good footage for TV? And I think you've answered that it really does stand up.
Look, I think there are some shortcomings with it in terms of the high-end professional realm. I think you need to add certain things to it, like stabilization, for example, because of the body being the size that it is. But the way it's going and the way it's growing is incredible, and the images coming out of a body that size blows me away.
Okay, guys, I am on a TV set, on a production. I've taken a bit of time out, and our next call is right now. Sorry for the ambient sound. I've actually been standing outside the studio so that I don't impede on their production inside. I'll have to bow out. Thank you very much, Fausto. It was a lovely chat, and we'll see you guys soon.
Thanks, Leon.
Cool. Thanks, Leon.
Cheers, guys.
Fausto, where can we find you on social media?
Instagram is the most important one. So it's Fausto Becatti, FAUSTO BECATTI. And that's my handle on Instagram.
Awesome. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Nice to see you again, Mike.
No problem. Thanks, Leslie.
Enjoy the rest of your week.
Thanks, Fausto.
Thank you so much, Mike.
Bye.